Hey everyone, what's up? It's Finch here, and today we're going to be discussing how a Pokemon goes from being the best Pokemon in the Uber's metagame a couple generations back to now being released and overused. That's right, the Pokemon infamous for giving opposing Pokemon some bad dreams is now in the land of overuse as Darkrai was recently released. Unfortunately, it's taken some pretty big hits in terms of effectiveness as we've seen its signature move, Dark Void, drop from all the way down to 50% usage when it previously was at 80% usage. Now, when Darkrai had an 80% usage sleep move, coupled with Bad Dreams, which deduced damage from the opponent every time it connected and they fell asleep, it was a potent foe, no doubt about it. It was one of the best Pokemon in DPP Ubers, and it even remained relevant into Black and White Ubers, where it was considered an A- tier Pokemon, which one of the best 15-20 Pokemon in the metagame. Even going into Generation 6, Oras, it was considered A+, it was even better. People really thought that it was going to be another one of those legendaries that carried Uber status for all time and it wouldn't be considered the OU again after it was initially dropped one generation and quickly banned. However, Dark Void in 2016 dropped from 80% to 50% accuracy, and people were wondering, is that going to be enough to hinder its potential viability? And a lot of people were like, well, maybe it'll hinder its viability in Ubers, but it won't make it a viable OU candidate because it still has 135 base special attack, 125 base speed, and while 70, 90, 90 bulk isn't good, it's not necessarily a glass cannon either with 90, 90 defenses. It also has enough coverage to pretty much hit whatever it would like to, so that was dismissed, and despite it being a Pokemon that fell all the way down to C- tier in Ubers in Generation 7, the last generation it was released in as it didn't come out in Generation 8, I believe, it was mostly seen as an afterthought for OU consideration. People wanted to bring it down potentially last generation, just never came to fruition, but this generation people thought more and more about it. In fact, there were rallying cries from it. Some top players like Vertex were really chanting for it in metagame threads, and eventually that movement gained a lot of support to the point that we voted on it, and unanimously it was determined from our OU council, consisting of myself and 10 other prominent players in the metagame, that Darkrai would drop to overused. So in this video we're going to discuss why it fell from grace to overused, and how effective it might be in the overused metagame with some sample sets as well. So Darkrai, again, as we discussed, has a pretty good offensive profile. 135 base special attack coupled with 125 base speed, it doesn't get a ton better than that. I mean, obviously there are a few things, but a lot of them have crippling drawbacks, and on top of that, while Darkrai, again, is not the bulkiest, it has enough to live most neutral attacks and even some weaker super effective attacks as well, and that's about all you can ask for with Pokemon with this speed and special attack. It also has great coverage. Dark is one of the premier offensive typings, really only being resisted by fighting. There aren't many special defensive fighting types, fairy, and opposing dark types. However, it easily could dispatch of all of those. For example, it has access to Focus Blast, which is going to hit steel types, which oftentimes are neutral to Dark Pulse but have a larger special defense on average, and also the aforementioned dark types, which resist dark moves, of course. So, for example, Darkrai can really do a number to something like King Gambit, Heatran, or even opposing Darkrai with Focus Blast. Another option for dark types would be Terra Blast with the fairy typing, which I think is going to be very common, as not only does it hit dark types, but it also is able to dispatch of opposing fighting types. Think of things like Great Tusk, or even if we're going down to lower tiers, Pokemon like Conkeldurr. In addition, it'll also be able to dispatch of prominent OU threats like Zamazenta while resisting close combat, and Iron Valiant while neutralizing Moonblast, which can go a long way as neither of those should be one-hit KOs on Darkrai once it assumes a neutrality to Moonblast or resistance to close combat, but both of them would kill it otherwise. Obviously, there's also things like Stab Dark Pulse, which is going to be its primary form of attacking. You're probably going to see on virtually every serious set of Darkrai. And it also has the ability to bolster its special attack by 2 stages with Nasty Plot. However, there are some other coverage moves it could use. While this is what I would consider a standard set to be, likely running boots and fitting on a more bulky offensive build as one of its, 2 or 3 faster Pokemon, and potentially being a primary Terra abuser to really flip the defensive spectrum. For example, it can suddenly take out revenge killers like Zamazenta that we just discussed, or maybe even immunize Draco Meteor from Dragapult and then kill it with Terra Blast, and things like that. You could potentially use it on a more offensive team in a different array where you're not going to be as reliant on Terra, so its teammates can do that, and instead it just focuses on coverage and lures. So Ice Beam to hit a Great Tusk, a Gliscor, Landorus T, a slew of other things. On top of that, Sludge Bomb for fairy types, things like Clefable, Iron Valiant, and other fairy types. I know we're getting a couple new ones as well, so that could always be helpful. Both these moves also hit things like Enamorus, of course, and then Dark Pulse, and you could see a Wise Glasses or a Life Orb. Both are very feasible boosting items to do damage. Really just depends on what you prefer. And of course, if you don't want to use Nasty Plot, you could also run Choice Specs. 135 special attack plus Choice Specs plus potential for Terra Dark really makes it so that Dark Pulse is able to, 2-KO even the bulkiest of walls. Things like Toxapex is easily able to be dispatched of. Things like Special Defensive Gliscor would be 2-KO'd. Heatran, if it's offensive, would be 2-KO'd, and still, special defensive would probably take over 40%. Things like Garganacl will probably be 2-KO'd as well. It would do unreasonable amount of damage, and you can predict something, Focus Blast or Sludge Bomb to switch. You could trick away the specs. There's a lot of different things you can do in that, of course. In addition, if you want to be more risky, you can run a set with Hypnosis and still take advantage of bad dreams and potentially catch some things for surprise. And if you take out your first potential checker counter with Hypnosis, then you get a free turn and you can do a lot more damage in the preceding turns. However, this set is risking a 60% accurate Hypnosis coupled with a 70% accurate Focus Blast. This is more of a risk taker's Darkrai, if you will. There. Finally, we're at 2 more sets. I don't think either of these are very serious, but Choice Scarf, if you really want to, take on the fast offensive new metagame with a Choice Scarf user, and also a potential Swords Dance set just for the fun of it. It also gets Sucker Punch, and you can run different Terror Blasts. 90 base attack, though. Nothing to write home about, so I wouldn't advise that. But yeah. So what do you guys think? Personally, I find Darkrai to be a really, interesting tool. Is it gonna be broken? I actually don't think so immediately. I think it might be pretty good. I think it might definitely be, very viable. I don't see it falling to Yu, for example, but broken, at least not initially, no. I think it actually might be a little overwhelmed at first. There can be a lot of strong, fast Pokemon surrounding it that I could see, taking over and maybe even eating away at the pie chart for potential usage for it. However, I do think there will be a day when, the metagame settles down, and at that point, I could see it being a little too much just because of how it interacts with Terra and how potent it can be, not only with Nasty Plot sets, but also potentially with the Choice Spec set. Those are really the ones I'm patrolling here, trying to figure out what coverage is best, what items is best. I think Boots are going to fare really nicely on it because it might want to not necessarily be a one-time stationary Pokemon, but also you could see Life Orb on more traditional offensive teams, or even something like a Fairy Resist Berry, Roselli Berry, or even potentially Chopple Berry, or different ways to use it. Maybe Salic Berry. I'm sure there are a ton of different options. So yeah, basically, I'm really curious what you guys have to say about Darkrai. I think it's a really cool addition to the metagame. I'm definitely excited to use it. Am I going to use it on all my teams? No, but there are definitely going to be a couple different teams I want to try it on. I'm going to try out, because there's just so many new Pokemon. And speaking of that, if there are other things you guys want to see me try out, let me know. I'm hearing that Pokemon Showdown Scarlet Violet 2. This DLC, the second DLC, is going to come out pretty soon. As I'm recording this, it's the night of the 15th in my time, East Coast time zone. So, hopefully that sheds some light, some perspective. Hopefully by the time this video is out, it's out, or it will be out soon. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more, and let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys expect, etc. All right, have a great day, guys. Later.